Hey everyone, so today I am doing the mid-year Freakout book tag. I absolutely adore watching these videos. I think it's really great to take a step back, especially in the middle of the year, and analyze what you've read. I'm always trying to read different genres, and so I like looking back and seeing what I've spent most of my time reading, how many things have let me down, how many things have excited me. And yeah, so I'm really excited to participate this year. So the first question is the best book you've read so far in 2020. And for me, without a doubt, is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I read this book in one sitting, and I cannot recall the last time I did that with a book. So I absolutely adored it. It's about these two young people, a girl and a boy, who come from completely different worlds. Her family is wealthy, but they're very distant and rough with each other. He is the son of her sort of nanny or maid type role, and so just financially they're very different, as well as the relationships and dynamics they have with their family. You have that difference, and then at school she's sort of an outcast. She's highly intelligent, and doesn't try to be anything that she's not, but it's school and it's being young, and so he is better at fitting in socially with the people around him in that element. His friends end up making fun of her a lot, and then kind of follows them on that journey together through college, through meeting new people, through having different relationships, and it's just a real intimate and honest look at a young relationship and the different sort of dynamics it takes throughout a lifetime. So yeah, absolutely loved this book. The second question is the best sequel you've read so far in 2020, and I have not read a sequel actually this year, so I'm going to move on to number 3. So the third question is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. For me, that is A Good Marriage by Kimberly McGrath. I have only heard good things about this book, so I have very high expectations for it, and I love a good thriller, so I'm really excited to read it. It's basically about a woman who is a lawyer. She is married, and there's sort of this turbulence in their marriage right as she gets a call from an old friend who is the primary suspect in his wife's murder. And she kind of goes on this journey of discovering secrets within their marriage, within the community, within her own marriage. And so it's probably really exciting, and I'm hoping it's as good as everyone says it is. I'm very choosy with books when they describe themselves as sort of a domestic thriller, because I feel like sometimes those stories can be very triggering. I haven't seen anyone say that it's like that, so I'm thinking it's not going to be too triggering. So fourth question is most anticipated books for the second half of the year. I have 2 that I'm really excited about. One is Notes on a Silencing by Lacey Crawford. This is actually a memoir. It's a retelling of her sexual assault by 2 people, that 2 men that she went to boarding school with. She was in an elite boarding school, and sort of the years of cover-ups and lies and secrets from the school administration to cover up this assault and continue silencing her, and having the strength to kind of go on that journey with yourself and your memories, and share it with the world is so important. And I'm already getting emotional, so I know that the book will make me very emotional, but I think it's going to be something that will help other people who've suffered sort of the same situation, or have had people silence their voices or not listen to them. And yeah, so the second book that I'm really looking forward to is A Rogue of One's Own by Evie Dunmore. I read Bringing Down the Duke, which is the first book in this series, that I just absolutely adored. It was so cute and witty and funny. And this is sort of another one in the series that takes place during the women's suffrage movement in England, and it's about these group of women who are banding together and trying to change, you know, wealthy, powerful, elite men to get on their side and to join the movement. And so this is just, I think, another women's journey. It's a historical fiction romance that I just eat up. Fifth question is your biggest disappointment so far in 2020 in books. I unfortunately have to say my biggest disappointment was Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, and it hurts me to say that because I do love Brandon Sanderson as a writer. I think he is amazing at building worlds and rich characters, and I love the fantasy books that I've read so far of his. I don't actually think this has anything to do with the book at all. I just don't like sci-fi. I, for some reason, cannot get into any sci-fi book that I read. It's hard for me even with film and television. I, you know, love Star Trek and stuff, but I just don't know why I can't seem to enjoy the genre, but I don't. And so just going through the list of books that I read this year, that one was the one that I was kind of hoping would bring me more into the genre because I was a fan of Brandon Sanderson as an author. But unfortunately, it wasn't good enough. Okay, so the sixth question is biggest surprise, and for me, that is The Things We Cannot Say by Kelly Rimmer. This is a book about two women whose stories are woven together through time. Takes place sort of in present day as well as in the Second World War, 1942, in occupied Poland. The reason why this is a surprise for me in terms of loving it is because I'm very picky about historical fiction, especially during the Second World War. I find a lot of historical fiction, especially during that time period, very hard to read and, you know, not something that I'm usually drawn to. And although this book was harrowing in moments, it was also so beautiful and moving, and the characters just were so rich, and her descriptions of the environment of these characters was so beautiful. And so I actually yearned to come back to this book, which was surprising to me. So the seventh question is favorite new author, whether it's to you or a debut author, and I'm going to pick Lucy Foley. I read The Guest List earlier this year and loved it. I eat up thrillers, and Ruth Ware has been sort of my modern day go-to, but I've already read all of her books except the one that's coming out soon, so I'm always looking for a new female sort of thriller mystery writer to look to, and for me I think that's going to be Lucy Foley. I recently bought The Hunting Party, which is another book that she wrote that I'm really excited to read, but yeah, she's who I'm gonna pick for that question. So number 8 is newest fictional crush, and this one I actually think is very interesting because whenever it came to Jane Austen, I feel like most people, myself included, always say Mr. Darcy is their crush, their male crush. But I recently reread Pride and Prejudice and recently reread Emma, and I do have to say now that I am a Mr. Knightley stan. Oh god, I adore him. And I recently watched the newest Emma that came out, and I really love the portrayal of Mr. Knightley in that film. And so I do have to say that Mr. Knightley is my new fictional crush. Yeah. Goodbye, Darcy. Get out of here. So number 9 is new favorite character, and although I didn't start the Throne of Glass series this year, I did finish it, and within Kingdom of Ash I will say that my new favorite characters are Fenris and Lysandra. I absolutely love them, and I wish that there was more story for them because I did love them so much, especially in this last book. The 10th question is a book that made you cry, and I'm just gonna repeat this with normal people because I cried a lot when I read that book. I cried a lot when I watched the show too, but so I cry a lot anyway, like every day I cry to something. And so it can be very difficult to pick just one, but I think that's the one that made me hurt when I cried. Like my face was red. There's a lot going on. Number 11, a book that made you happy for me, that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I cried during this book too, but overall it made me really happy and giddy, and I related a lot to the main character. So going on that journey with her made me happy. But essentially Beach Read is about a romance author writer who is going through some family drama, loses someone close to her, gets left this beach house where she decides to hunker down and write her next book because she's very strapped for cash. The problem is that because she's kind of going through this sort of betrayal in her life, her ability to write romance is sort of, you know, not there anymore. So when she actually runs into her neighbor, who happens to be her arch nemesis from college, also a writer, but one that, you know, writes Pulitzer Prize-winning books, they both decide to switch genres and write each other's genre, and they go on sort of this journey together, even though it's a journey by themselves. And yeah, it just made my heart happy. So this is my pick for the book that made me happy so far in 2020. So the next question, question 12, is the most beautiful book that you've bought so far this year or received. And I have two. One is this copy of Anne of Green Gables. I think it's so pretty. It's by a Puffin Classic, so it's very small compared to it, but it's a children's book, so it makes sense. But I just love the illustration of it. I love the colors, and it makes me happy looking at it. So that's one. The second one that I'm picking is this new copy of Emma that I got. I'm not the biggest fan of this now motion picture tag here, but overall I love this, and I love the font. So yeah, also by Penguin. So yeah. So number 13 is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And obviously there are so many. I don't have enough time to read all the books that I want to. And I mean, my TBR is like 50 pages long, so there's a lot. But I sort of made a short list of books that I've been thinking about, like I've picked up to read and then put down. So the first book that I want to read before the end of the year is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a YA book that uses the devastating true story of a plane crash that happened when it was on his way to Santo Domingo, and about 225 people were killed in that plane crash. 90% of them were either Dominican or of Dominican descent. And although the crash was obviously super devastating, the media did not cover it because it wasn't linked to a terrorist attack. But obviously it caused a lot of grief and sadness and loss for a lot of people. So this book uses that devastating situation as a way to connect these two girls, these sisters who don't know about each other, when their father, who was on the plane, dies. And so I have just heard amazing things about this author. I have The Poet X. The reason I didn't mention that one is because it's in my TBR basket already, so I know I'm going to be reading it rather shortly. So I wanted to mention this one instead. And the writing is just supposed to be remarkable. I think the connection between two people who didn't know they existed, and their different situations and life experiences, and coming together and dealing with something so monumental like losing one's family member and parent is gonna be great. I mean, I'm already tearing up a little bit, so I know, one, that I'm super emotional, but two, that this will probably be very moving. So the next book that I really want to read is The Mothers by Britt Bennett. I am currently reading The Vanishing Half, which is her new release book, and I've had this on my bookshelf for a while, but I didn't pick it up. And I'm enjoying The Vanishing Half so much, the way it's written, and her just amazing talent at using different voices for characters. And this is sort of supposed to be, I think, sort of similar in terms of going on a journey with characters from you know, younger selves to older selves, and how past experiences can shape us, and relationships and all kinds of things like that. So I'm definitely going to be reading this soon as well. So the next book that I want to read before the end of the year is this guy, Words of Radiance, and it is the second book in the Stormlight Archive series. I've mentioned before that I was going to read it, but I did actually read a little bit of it. There are so many other fantasy books that I want to get to, but I kind of put them off because I want to finish the series. So it's very important to me that I finish this book before the end of the year so I can read the third one, and then I can move on to a different series, because there are so many fantasy books that I haven't read yet that I want to, because I have found sort of just a love and admiration and an obsession even for fantasy books. So this is definitely on the list. So that completes my list, completes answering all the questions. I did my best. And yeah, I am going to call it a day. I don't know how to end these things.